Hey, what's going on? We're back. We're going to do another dead white guy. I know you got to love it. So here's the thing. This is kind of crazy, right? So we're talking about all this religious poetry, religious sonnets. I was reading this book about Louise Glick, and, she has this poem, and, she's talking about her garden. This poem, I think, is Matins, and it occurs in her collection, The Wild Iris. And this there's a clear, obvious connection to Milton, and I didn't know the Milton sonnet. I felt like a bonehead, so I thought we could cover it here. And really, Ed he just started this massive landslide of religious sonnets, and damn you, Crikey, but you got to finish what you started. And if Louise Glick is tuning into it, the Nobel Prize winning American poet, it's still relevant today, and, if she's tuned into it, it's worthwhile for us to tune into it because it could help us. It could deepen our practice as well. So if you're out there tuning your verses, tune into this, number 19. When I consider how my light is spent ere half my days in this dark world and wide, that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. Woo! Pretty meaty, pretty meaty. He's really getting into it in this one, as far as I'm concerned. So let's just break out the octave here. So I think when I consider how my light is spent, John Milton here may be alluding to the fact that later in life he starts going blind, and he needs an amanuensis to compose his poetry, so he needs someone to write down stuff and read it back to him. So that's then we have the kind of World Wide Web, the dark world and wide here. One talent which is death to hide. So he's referring to in the New Testament. There's this parable of the servants where I think it's in Matthew where the master of the house trusts his three servants to take care of his cash monies while he's away for a while, probably on some type of business trip or whatever. And two of the servants, they go to the markets and they invest. They invest that monies with bankers, with usurers. But one of them is scared of losing the money. So he's crapping himself, and he's like, well, if I lend it and I can't get it back, I'm going to get punished. So he buries the money. When the master comes back, he asks his three servants for account, and the one who buried the money, he punishes him. Of course, the illusion is that or the analogy here is that, you're given an immortal soul, and Jesus expects you to make some type of good use of it. You can't just sit around doing nothing, right? So, but Milton's mad. He's mad at God because he's going blind. And his talent, he thinks, is to bring poetry into this world, and God's made it more difficult for him to do what he thinks is like his best use of his soul. One talent, which is death to hide, lodge with me useless. So I think he's complaining, how am I going to do anything with this? So his soul is still bent to serve his Maker and present the true account. So he knows he's going to be in deep doo-doo when his master gets back. When he dies, he's going to have to make an account for his life, and he's worried that his account isn't going to be very good. But he wants to complain. He wants to say, doth God exact day labor, Meaning, do I need to go and toil endlessly for no apparent reason, just suffer mindlessly? I think that's how I'm reading it. Oh, it's interesting. I fondly ask. So it's interesting that he would be able to fondly ask such a biting, sarcastic question. I can't take that fondly at face value. There might be some other ways to read this poem, but I'm having trouble with that fondly. That fondly doesn't sound that fond. I mean, it sounds like he thinks this sucks. So then we get to the pivot right after the octave. We have our pivot to the eternal. We're already kind of in eternity land. But patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. So it's kind of this enjammed pivot here. But then, so Milton's kind of rejecting this parable. Hey, this poem's crazy. I mean, Milton was pretty radical. This is crazy. God doth not need either man's work or his gifts. But the parable says you have to take care. You have to do something useful with your soul because you're gonna be an account is demanded of it. You have to make yourself useful on this earth. So Milton's pushing against that, which makes sense because probably his radical Protestantism here. He's saying, you can't read the parable that way. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding, speed and post over land and ocean without rest. So. Some people are really busy, but they also serve who only stand and wait. So even if you're doing nothing, potentially you're still doing something. Woo! So I look at this as kind of like almost like Zen koan level of like complexity, mysticism, folding over double. I mean, I actually don't even know that this is that good a sonnet. I mean, this octave is... What is the central image of this octave? The talents, I guess, the parable of the talents from Matthew. And then there's this kind of dialogue aspect to this poem, which is also hard to read and it's difficult. Don't do dialogue in sonnets. It's not, and that doesn't. I mean, rarely does it really work. I guess Shelley did that. I met a traveler in an antique land who said, he can do it. We haven't done Ozymandias on this channel. Maybe we should, but, okay. I don't know. There's just, it's a kind of a mess, this octave, with the dialogue in there. I think what gets people why this poem is kind of remembered, although I didn't know it, but why it's so influential is because it's so sad and combative at the same time to me. Like Milton's going blind. It is sad. He's fighting it. And the way that Milton goes to battle, the way that he fights stuff he doesn't like is absolutely crazy. The guy's just this crazy genius of just... Look at some of these rhymes. It gets spent, bent, and present. Gets wide, hide, chide, denied. The rhymes, he can just he bends them himself. Bent and present and prevent is kind of insane. How he's forcing them. And you see how logically almost it feels forced to our ear. It bends our ear on us. He goes a little bit easier in the sestet. It goes a little bit softer by contrast with these monosyllable rhymes. Need, speed, best, rest. That rest there. What a relief when we get to that. My gosh, as a reader, we're tired. That rest is a big part of this poem. And it's so, that whole line in post, o'er land and ocean without rest, those big o'er, ocean, without, gives us this kind of opening, expansion, space, breath that we just don't get. Look at how tight and contracted. That first line is, when I consider how my light is spent. It's acute in this way. Also in that sestet, we get that mild, bear his mild yoke, and we think then of Jesus Christ. I think, and I also reminded maybe a little bit of Blake's language. I don't know. Definitely complicated, piled with contradictions and just, such a difficult. No one liked Milton. I mean, he didn't have friends. People didn't like this guy. Nobody liked him. Just a difficult guy. But he left us this kind of pile of stuff that we're still kind of sorting through. Still trying to make heads or tails of some of this stuff. And, I can't laud this poem as one of the greatest sonnets on this channel. But some of the techniques are so bothersome. It's so interesting because of that. It's hard to kind of completely leave it alone. Is it beautiful? No. Is it worth thinking about at times? Pulling out some of these phrases might end up sticking with me. Doth God exact day labor, light denied? I might think of that at some point, when stuff's getting real for me. I also think, the kind of have Jesus asking, does his Father forsaken him? There's a little bit of that going on here. Have you forsaken me? I don't know. I mean, the kind of the stones on this guy Milton to do this in a poem and to test his faith in this way. He's really stretching it out a lot. All right, well, I'm interested in hearing what y'all think as well. And, we got to stop meeting this way, guys. We got to stop talking about these intense, bitter religious poems. We got to do something lighter. I think I have some stuff that could get lighter, but let me know. Let me know what you think, because that's what it's all about. Okay, later, dudes.